Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode with me and Stephen. We've got a really interesting one today that Stephen's brought to the table, and it's called Feeling Guilty About Working When You've Got Children. So, Stephen, I'm imagining this has come from some conversations that you've had later, because it's not something that's come up in my world specifically, but I'm really interested in it. But I'm imagining one or two or more clients have potentially talked about this to you. So, just explain where this one came from.
Yeah, it's a reoccurring theme, really, Oliver, with a lot of the clients that I work with, and also one that strikes quite hard at myself that I feel as well. It's a real personal one for me, this one, and it's that balance of being able to do a good job at work and be a good parent at the same time, or guardian. And it's just that feeling that you have inside that sometimes you've got to make some decisions that means you might not be there with that client or be able to fit that date into your diary or be able to do that networking event in the evening because you're looking after your child, or a child that you are a guardian for. And we hear this a lot from a woman's perspective, but we don't hear it a lot from a man's perspective. And the reality is, I think both sides struggle with this. And it's one where you feel like, are you doing the best job possible on both fronts? Are you being the best parent? Are you doing the best job at it within your work? And you sometimes torn, really, really torn. And I've had to make some decisions in the last few months where I've actually turned down business because I wanted to be with my daughter. And you know, it's just how does that make you feel? And you know, I want to just sort of talk about this today to get it out there to people that we shouldn't be feeling guilty. We should not be feeling guilty, and we should not be feeling that we're not doing the best job possible at our work because we've got to leave half an hour earlier some days, or we've only worked half of our lunch break. Um, you know, I know some parents where you always see them running, literally running, because they've got minutes to spare to get to school to pick one of the children up, and all of this plays into anxiety. It plays into to stress. It plays into not eating properly. It has a huge, 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 huge knock-on effect because of the way that you feel. And I know a lot of people feel like this. And this podcast for me is to let people know they're not alone in the way that they feel. That the way that they feel is not just unique to them. That actually it is a thing. It is a thing that we feel, and we shouldn't feel it. And if there's one thing I want to get across here is we shouldn't feel the way that we feel. We shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, that's a powerful one. I mean, we're coming into the realms of a couple of things, aren't we? Work-life balance, expectations of work, whether you own the business or whether you work for somebody. One of the things that immediately comes to mind is the sort of expectation piece that companies have. Either if you are the owner of the company and you're running around like a blue ass fly, or if you work for a company like this. I've never fully understood the need to have rigid times for work. There are clearly some service areas that have specific times, so it's a bit more important, but that's still manageable in some way, shape, or form. And therefore, people feeling guilty because they can't quite make it in for 8:30 because 8:30 is slap down in the middle of when you've just dropped your kids off at school. Why does it need to be 8:30, employers or founders of company? Why can't we build in flexibility? Why can't we make it start at 9? Why can't we start at 9:30? Why can't we have other people who volunteer to be available at those times to cover off the people in the school? And I always remember working many years ago in the local authority and people getting really peed off because they people wanting to have the school holidays off. Oh, well, yeah, always want to have the school holidays off. Good, they've got kids who are off on the holidays. Of course they do. Well, why can't I go there? So, well, if you want to go and be paying 3 times more for a holiday and go off in the school holidays as well, well, be my guest. But I don't understand what the animosity is for. I don't understand the aggro. If people in my teams had to go, and I wasn't a great manager back in those days, to be fair, as part of my journey is to get here is because I was not great. But in those situations, it made no logical sense for me to have my staff wound up. So if they needed to do something with the kids, we'd work something out. But in the short term, kids come first. Because if I'm honest, not because your kids and your happiness is my priority, you being in good mind and ready to come and do a good job at work is my priority. And I know if you're stressed out about X, Y, and Z at home, you're not going to be focused on the ball. So whatever your motivations are, whether you be it because you're a good person or because you want efficiencies and productivity, there's no logic to this. So for me, it's a bigger piece that the expectations, and we know I've done a podcast on this previously with you, and I talk about it a lot in the past. But first of all, if you're having these problems, are the expectations that you're putting upon yourself actually the ones that are expected of you? Because it might not be. There may be far more flexibility than you think. And if it is the case that these expectations are real, well, you need to start having a conversation with these people, and lots of things need to be discussed because maybe some changes need to be made. But for me, I bet a lot of this stress comes from what we tell ourselves our families want, our kids want, our work wants, and we've never actually checked in to find out what the truth of the matter is. So that's what I'm hearing, the kind of internal struggle of, oh, I must do this, and that's not right, and oh, my daughter or my son will be so upset. Well, will they? Yeah, I had one final point, and then I'll give the mic back. But I have a client, he's incredibly successful, he's sold his business for a huge amount of money, and he's absolutely obsessed with legacy. He has 2 sons, and he spoke to one of them about what he was trying to do for them and why he's working so hard. And he's like, Dad, I don't need that. It was monetary mainly, is a lot of what he was doing, and it just said, look, I don't need that. I need you to be well. I need you to be available. I need you there. I don't need you thinking about working longer and harder and more into your senior years for this legacy that I'll be happy. Don't tell me wrong. He said, look, I'm not going to throw it in your face, but I don't need it. Life's good for me already. But he'd never had that chat. And we'd had a session where I was like, this legacy thing, are you sure that's what they want? Are you sure they don't just want you fit, well, available? And that was really mind-blowing for him because he'd worked into his 50s focused on this legacy. So I'll stop there. What do you think?
Yeah, you're right. And I guess we have talked about expectations before in terms of the expectations that we put on ourselves or what we believe people expect of us. And I guess that is at the core and at the center of it. But I also think maybe it's around comparing ourselves with something else we've talked about before is where we're comparing ourselves with others. And because what we're seeing doesn't seem the same as someone else, that then causes that level of anxiety, and then we feel like we're not doing a great job. The other side to this as well is, sometimes, Oliver, it's about the things that don't cost money. It's about the greatest gift you can give to another person is your time. And sometimes I guess it's how we rationalize that in our head, who gets the time. And I think that's what we beat ourselves up about. That's the bit. It's almost like, well, does my daughter get the time or should this time be for work? And I think that's at the center of it. It's, where should my focus and where should my time be? And beating yourself up about that and feeling that you're not doing the best. And then the other side to this, I do think employers have got some work to do in supporting people from a point of view of asking the right questions to get the right information in order to then be able to support people. And I don't want to say for 1 minute that this is all on employers, because it's not. I think it's a two-way, but I think what employers need to be able to do is to create the right environment and culture that these things can be talked about in the right way. And I think that doesn't happen enough. And it goes back to something we've talked about before, which is about investment in our workforce again. It's the investment is the time and create the space so that people feel comfortable talking about this. And then I think the next thing that it's about is probably, you know, dare I say it, you know, social media and society. So again, this thing where we're constantly looking at sound bites of people's lives and thinking, well, that doesn't fit with our life, and forgetting that that's just a very small window, a very, very small window into someone's life. And of course, it's going to be all shiny and all flashy and all lovely. But the reality is, it ain't that flashy and it ain't that lovely. You're just catching that small moment in a day where something has gone really, really well from them. So I think it's a mixture of things. And, you know, it's really hard, Oliver, because, you know, sometimes it's the psychological effect it has on you and the knock-on effect it has on you. So, you know, sleep becomes an issue because you're probably taking on too much. You're not hydrating enough because you're forgetting to drink. You're not eating the right food because you're just grabbing on the go, because you're trying to please all these different things that are in your life. You're trying to please all of them. And actually, what you've actually got to do is go, stop, think, reflect. Right. What can I actually do? What is feasible? What do I want to do with my family? What time do I want to spend? Having that tough conversation with your employer to say, listen, I don't think it's working the way we want it to work right now. How can we look at this to get a better solution in order that I have the more time to be able to do the job more effectively, and I don't keep walking around with all this guilt hanging over me. Does that make sense, Oliver?
Yeah, 100%. A few things sort of come to mind. First of all, just to touch on the social media side of things. Whilst I do promote on pretty much every platform, I must admit I've given up on Facebook these days. I'm a bit bored of that one. But in the main, I do use it. The reason I use it is because I know a lot of people are on it. And that's kind of the problem. If you don't need social media for work, and then there's a big question mark around that as well. But let's just assume you don't, and you are purely on it from a social point of view. I'm not saying stop and come off. I am saying please, please, please try a detox. Try just a week. If you can manage a week. I have actually done a few detoxes in my time. Even with the business, I've actually pulled me off for a few months because there is just a lot of nonsense out there. And in this particular context, I use a phrase I talk about a lot. I've done videos on this in the past as well, is if someone has to say it, then it ain't so. Because those people who are showing you how great it is, I call BS. Because you are staging that. You are presenting a way that you want the world to see you. Because if it just happens naturally, then that is how it is and that is how you are seen. So you don't need to make it. You don't need to produce it. You don't need to show it. You don't need these big grand shows of affection and so forth that you do on social media, because the person that you're trying to show that to already knows, and you don't need everybody else to know about it. So honestly, whenever you're seeing that and you're feeling a little bit low and you think, oh, that person's got it better than me, please seriously review it, question it. It doesn't matter, and it probably isn't true, and life probably isn't as easy as they're talking about. I've talked about it before where I've seen people do lovely emotional posts about their partner, and I was like, I know they're in like real trouble, which is awful. But that is not the reality of their situation. Their situation is really quite crappy right now. But on social media, it looks bloody amazing, like they had the holiday, of their dreams and so forth. No, it's BS. So that's the first real important thing that I want to remind people of. And that detox thing, honestly, to just see the difference you have when you're not on these platforms, and you're not getting that sort of influence to your thinking would be huge. And then the second one is about time management. Again, it seems brutally cold to think about spending time with your family with time management, but there will be many things in your days that you don't need to be doing, or speeds at which you respond to things that you don't need to be doing. And when we think about employers, yeah, it is not their obligation, absolutely 100% not, but it is so vital to the lifeblood of your business that your people are happy and engaged. And the way that you help them be happy and engaged is to make sure that their time is available. And you talked about it early on, about one of the most valuable things you can give people is not money, it's time. So you talked about your time, but I would just twist that a little bit and say time. If you can just give those people back just a little bit of time, they will pay that back. So it's a pay it forward thing, because they will respect and value where they are so much more by that little bit of time you've given them to help them with whatever their outside issues might be, whether it be childcare or whatever. If that is just an unquestionable given, I am confident that 9 times out of 10, if not more, the value that you see in their work will continue to go up, because they know you've got their back, and that's huge. So they're the two real key points that come out for me. What do you think to that? Have you anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I suddenly started thinking about when we was talking was the judging bit, where I think the other reason why, the parents feel that they might not be doing the best job possible on both fronts is because they're judged.
Hmm.
And I think, you know, we have this really bad habit as humans sometimes where we judge other people. And even though we don't know their full setup, we don't know what they've had to do this morning and why they've just ran to the school gates 2 minutes late. We don't know why they've been a bit low today at work and they probably haven't been themselves. I think we judge people. We absolutely do. And I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. We sometimes just judge people without ever knowing what they've had to embark on that day, that week, that month, that year. And that puts pressure on. So then, that puts pressure on you feeling that guilt as well, because you're feeling like you're getting judged. And that might be a look, that might be, the way someone's body language is, that might be the tone of someone's voice, oh, late again, whatever it is, which might be a really honest and sincere comment, but the impact that that has, because it's a judging comment, which I also think happens a lot. I call it the schoolgate conversations, which are sometimes more scary than any other conversation you can ever have. Um, and so I think the judging side of it is part of it. And what you talked about there at the time, I think that's massive. I think that's absolutely huge, because that puts the pressure on, that makes us doubt ourselves. It goes back to another podcast we've talked about, which is planning. Maybe we have to be, we're not all the best planners. Some people actually survive really well by flying by the seat of their pants and doing everything lastminute.com. That's just how they live, and it works for them. Someone else works because it works for them because they're very, very planned and organized. But that doesn't mean, just because you're not very planned and organized, that you're any better or worse than anyone else. But I do think sometimes the planning does help to a certain degree. But I think this judging thing, also I would throw into the mix as well, Oliver.
Yeah, that's a really cool point, because one of the things that I want to possibly call some of the people listening out on their BS, if they are thinking this, we all judge. Do not ever try and be that person who says, I don't judge people. We all judge. It's human bloody nature. The difference between judgmental people and judging is we will think about that before we act. So the important thing is, I know I judge people, but I also know the impact that has, and I also will then have a debate in my head, with my internal monologue, about what might be going on and why that reaction that I was going to have wouldn't be very helpful. Sometimes I had a moment with a friend of mine. It was just, he was doing a load of great stuff for us, but I wasn't hugely happy with how it started, and I was quite moany. And I suddenly caught myself. It took a while, took myself, but in our little WhatsApp chat, I said, whoa, I stopped and I said, guys, I'm really sorry. I've just gone back through everything I've said. And do you know what? First of all, thank you very much, Matt, for everything you've done, because it's awesome. I'm really happy with it. Yes, all right, it's not started off in the way I would have hoped, but actually it's going to be great. And all I've done is drag us down and been really low about it. Now, that was great, because he was able to say, thank you. Thank you for that. That's great, because he wasn't going to say, you moany, shut up, but you could tell that's what he was thinking. But it's having the courage to do that. I'm not good at admitting when I'm wrong. I'm really not. I'm not going to put myself up here and say I'm some sort of angel when it comes to this. But the power that had to recognize it. So don't tell yourself or other people that you don't judge people, because that is a lie. But do start building strategies to work out how you're going to interpret what you've judged in your head to make sure that it is helpful in the way that it is communicated or however you seem to act. That's the important bit. Don't tell yourself you don't judge, you do. What do you do with the information that your head is telling you? And balance to that, just because you're feeling judged doesn't make it so. You don't know what you're being judged by. It could be that it's not happening. It probably is, but it doesn't mean that it's a negative. Like, oh, you're a bad parent. It might be, oh my word, that there must be something going on in their world, or you don't know what the judgment is. So don't be too hard on yourself. And if you can, ask. But if that's too awkward, just don't always presume the worst. I think that's the really important point. So I'm conscious that we've gone over the 20-minute mark. I wanted to get those points across. And I'd love you to just finish, Stephen, with anything that you'd also like to add, because obviously you brought this one up. It means a lot to you. So fire away.
Yeah, yes. What I would say is even I've had to take some of my own medicine and practice what I preach. So yeah, I've learned a lot from this one, and it's something that I really want everyone to focus on and think about how best they balance it, get the quality of life, and listen. Stop feeling guilty, guys, because we're all doing the best and we're all doing a great job.
Awesome. Great way to finish. Thanks for listening, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it.